tore up the pedal board. It feels like it was only a few months ago that I built it, but I guess I've had it for two and a half years now. It was a great board, and I really dug the way it was laid out, but I've learned some things since I built that. One of them being how difficult it is to replace a cable when the pedals are that tightly placed together. So one of the main reasons I'm switching things up is I'm taking a bunch of stuff off the rig. It's going to get a little bit more simple. I'm spacing the pedals out so it's easier to repair. It's going to be a little bit lighter as well. In this video, I'm just going to take you through and share with you some of my reasons for doing what I'm doing with the rig. I've redesigned, I should say, my pedal board probably 20 times over the last couple years. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff that went into this new design, and maybe I can help you fast forward a little bit in your journey and figure some of that out. First thing I'm doing is I had all these custom square plugs, SP400 soldered cables that I made. I'm going to try and reuse as many of these as possible. You can see there is a little bit of memory just from how it was, in that board for 2 years. So I tried to straighten that out. Then I took a cable tester, and I'm going to make sure they all work still. I'm going to try and get rid of some of that memory that's on the cable, and then I'm going to measure them to size on the pedal board, see how many I can get away with reusing without soldering at all. The one main thing that is changing here is that I have to switch out the power supply. So I was using the Chuck's DC7 and 8 combo to power the entire board. Never had any issues with that. It was working great, but it literally won't fit underneath the riser on this board. So I'm switching to the Voodoo Labs 3 Plus, which I was surprised to see that they switched to like auto compatibility for all voltages from 110 to 240. That was one of the reasons I switched away from Voodoo Labs years ago. Now that they've added that back in, happy to reconsider some of their product line. So that's getting here tomorrow. Today I'm going to do as many of the audio and the MIDI cables that I can, so that hopefully I'm ready when the power supply gets here. I can just throw that on and hopefully be finished tomorrow evening if possible. I do have a show coming up this weekend, a series of shows with the Pittsburgh Symphony. We're doing a rock tribute show, basically. So I'm hoping to use this rig for that if it's finished in time. There were a few things I had to solder here. The first one is the unbalanced output that's coming from my direct box. Yeah, I can summon my stereo channels to mono if I want to, but most of the time I'm probably just going to take the left channel and use that to feed a personal monitor on stage, stuff like that. Then I've got the headphone output right next to it, which is coming from the HX Stomp. Since that's the last pedal in the rig, I'm not missing anything. I can send from the headphone output, which is normally going to be buried. That's going to be hardwired to the side of the pedal board, so I just take the cable from the headphones, plug right in. The main outputs are going to come from the Pinstripe DISO Plus, which is basically just a modeler specific direct box. If you've got a regular direct box, that's going to work fine. If you haven't bought anything yet, you might consider something like this. This is technically a line isolator. The main difference is that a direct box pads down your signal. A line isolator is a one-to-one output. So the level that goes in is what comes out, right? It just means that we don't have to boost it later at the console. So these are all the cables, along with those that I was able to take out of the pedal board. Those all work still. I tested them all, and they're just going to go in a bag so that I can jump, in the future if one fails. One thing I did here was I left a lot more room around the unit, so I can still get to these and pull them out if needed. At this point, all the audio cables and the MIDI controlling cables have been wired, not necessarily cleaned up in some areas, but I'm going to wait until the power supply comes tomorrow to do that. A few of the pedals that came off the board, Chase Plus Warped Vinyl, one of my favorite analog chorus vibrato pedals, but the Terraform does just fine, and the HX Stomp as well, so I can do without it. The New Neighbor Tri-Chorus was the very last pedal in the chain. I would apply a little bit of modulation sometimes when I was writing ambient music, just run the mix real low. And then the J-Rocket Archer that I just found I wasn't really using all that much. The idea was that it lived kind of hidden away in the pedal board, and I would use it to make up the difference in volume between single coil and humbucker presets. So I can use either guitar with either preset, The power supply just showed up. The first thing I'm going to do is just test all of the cables that I have on the board so far. I'm going to hook this up so I can power the pedals and then just wiggle each connection, make sure it's all solid. Yeah, got the pedal power hooked up. I'm still waiting on a cable for the Stomp. I'm just powering it off of the original power supply right now. I'm still waiting on a current doubler cable, but it's all together, it's all running. I realized I got a new computer since the last time I used the Morningstar editor. I got the Mac Studio. So I'm downloading that, the editor for it anyway. And yeah, so the first thing I did was I just held a note on the guitar and just, moved all the cables here, just make sure that nothing's crackling, cutting in and out, checking for bad cables. That was all good. So this was set up from last time. This was okay. Echosystem switching just fine. The Terraform is receiving MIDI messages as well. I cannot get the reverb right now to do anything aside from changing presets on the unit. So I have to figure out why that's not getting connection. That's about the only thing that's not working right now. Checking back in a few days later. Today's Thursday. I gotta leave for this rehearsal in a second. I gotta pack my car. But Tuesday night I finished wiring up the power side of things. It's all finished basically. I cleaned it up. I am missing one cable. It's a current doubler. So it's taking two 9-volt sockets from the Voodoo Labs, combining the current so it's enough to power the HX Stomp. And that one got sent out from Sweetwater on Friday. Went through Nashville, ended up back in Fort Wayne at Sweetwater yesterday for some reason. So I'm just going to use one of these power supplies, one of the actual Helix power supplies, to do the thing this weekend. Yeah. So let me walk you through basically how this thing is laid out. I'm not going to get too in depth with the MC8 because that's a little complicated. So here it is. We got the Morningstar MC8. This is my MIDI controller, which is controlling presets for the reverb, the Echosystem, the Wampler Terraform. It's also tied into the Stomp, but I'm not really using MIDI to control that right now. Here's the signal path, basically. We've got the TU3S, which is an always-on tuner from Boss. It's got a great input buffer, so that's why I use that there. It's always on. Love to see it. And it comes out of here into the Wampler Terraform, where I'm doing all my pre-overdrive modulation. Stuff like I've got phaser. I tend to like Univibe before overdrives. If you're Jimi Hendrix, you might like the opposite. I've got like envelope filter, flanger, that's also before. And then heads into the input of the Stomp where I'm doing all my amp processing, all the modeling. I've got compression always on foot switch 1, pedal overdrive, amp overdrive, and I just selected a few presets from my amp tones. I set it up with the effects loop. I added a boost on foot switch 5. Foot switch 4 is a little reverb toggle if I want it. And they all have volume controller assignments. So the volume and the expression feeds into the MC8, outputs MIDI to the Stomp to control the volume parameter, which is one of these volume blocks somewhere in here. So yeah, out of the Stomp effects loop, it goes into the Pitchfork. If I need any pitch shifting, out of the Pitchfork into the Freeze. I could not live without this for the stuff that I do. I'm not going to use it this weekend on this gig, obviously, but for a lot of the music that I like to create in my jazz group, I definitely need this pedal. Out of the Freeze goes back to the Terraform where I'm running stuff like chorus, vibrato, tremolo, rotary, anything that would go after overdrives. Then it goes to the Echosystem, still in mono. This is just all delays. Comes out of here in stereo, into the reverb, all reverb stuff. Comes out stereo into the effects return. I can add, a stereo modulation effect in here if I want to. And then finally, it pipes out to the DISO Plus, where I've got balanced XLR connections. Also a through, which I run my on-stage monitor for. I'll talk about that when I get to the theater. I can explain the MC8. It's not really that complicated. This is the bank that I built this morning. And this first page is just controlling the reverb and the ecosystem. So we've got the dry button, just bypasses both of them. My stock sound is just a little bit of halt reverb, no delay. Then I've got a lead patch, which has a very slight volume boost. So new reverb sound, a little bit of stereo delay. And then up here I've got 3 different selections for various degrees of reverb and delay for whatever I might need it for rhythm parts. I've got a tap tempo down here that sends to the ecosystem and the Terraform. And yeah, if I want to select like a U2 style delay, these are all subdivisions now. So this actually just, it paged to a different bank for a second. Once I hit this, dotted medium volume is what that M stands for. So we have 8th note, medium, triplet, 8th, dotted, quarter, and then a quarter note delay. So you would just select any of these and then it jumps back. Then I hit the page button, and this is controlling just modulation. So if it's in caps, that means it's engaged. If I turn on tremolo and then I can turn on univibe, it'll cancel the tremolo. And you can see this is all controlling the presets on the Terraform. So yeah, and then like I said earlier, the HX Stomp is just doing compression, overdrives, and stuff like that. So it just keeps it simple and separated. Something else I haven't really talked about too much is the monitor that I'm using. It's an acoustic amp, actually. It's the Fishman Loudbox Mini, which I bought in 2014 or 15, the first year they came out, and it was, it's definitely the piece of gear in my collection that I've gotten the most use out of. One of the nice things, it has a bass control, so yeah, especially like in this situation, it's a hollow stage, a very resonant hall. We have some bass buildup that happens when you put your monitor on the floor like that, and so having that bass control really helps a lot. Yeah, I'm running a separate output, so I run from the DISO left out XLR to the front of house, and then I continue on the pass-through that goes to the Loudbox Mini. And so any changes I make on that amp, the EQ, it doesn't affect what front of house is getting. I'm gonna link the Loudbox Mini, the pedals I used, and just a bunch of other stuff I like to use when I build rigs like this in the description, if that might help you. Those are gonna be affiliate links, so if you purchase through them, I get a small commission. Just goes to help support the channel. Yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all that stuff if you enjoyed it. I do have like 70 or 80 Helix videos now that are in a playlist. I'll put it up here if I remember. There's also a playlist that I put together a few years back when I built the rig that I tore up for this video. It was an 8-part series where I just went through very meticulously, showed you the entire process of building that thing from start to finish. So maybe watch that if you're interested. Take it with a grain of salt, because you know there's some stuff I changed. But yeah, take care. See you in the next one.